Earlier this year, I decided I wanted to experience more of what Guild Wars 2 actually had to offer, professions included. 3 months into this one class a month challenge, and Thief was up next. My Thief was actually my second main character I ever had, though still only clocking in with 245 hours of gameplay after 12 years now. I've never really felt good at playing Thief since I came back to Guild Wars 2. So naturally, I took her into what most would consider the most painful expansion. So hopefully by the end of the month, Thief would be second nature to me. If you're joining me for the first time this month, the challenge is simple. I'm playing only Thief for all of my Guild Wars 2 gaming, and I can't look up any builds. I have to build them from scratch myself. This month's goal, as you may have already guessed, finish as many Heart of Thorns open world achievements as possible. Now, I've played a decent amount of Thief compared to others, mostly on Core and Deadeye, so wanting to start off different, I dared to play Daredevil first. I recently made the legendary staff Bifrost, so I fleshed out my gear with Celestial stats, set up my build, and got to work in the jungle. Now, Verdant Brink has always been an interesting zone for me. On one hand, I actually understand the layout and can find my way in here. And on the other hand, my first memories are from the launch of Heart of Thorns getting absolutely mauled to death by pocket raptors like a Keg and Holbrack, as tons of NPCs and players perish around me, screaming for balance patches and swinging their swords. Verdant Brink also had the most achievements that I could see left other than Dragon's Stand, so I figured that Daredevil would be up to the task. Right off rip, as I tackled meta event sequences, I realized I was a terrible thief. I had no idea what any of my steal skills were doing whenever I picked them up. I'm a dreadfully addicted button masher, so I constantly spammed more of a skill than I wanted to, since on Thief, it's all initiative based and not cooldown based, and I was used to having 11 billion health and survivability from the scrapper I had just got done using, so we'll get there or die trying, I guess. The good news is that despite being out of practice, Daredevil was exceptionally strong. 3 dodges that buff me, and regenerating endurance like nobody's business to keep dodging more often was a good start. The ability to blind enemies and reflect missiles with the Staff 4's Dust Strike, which I definitely made good use of. Yeah, I was definitely good at using that. And throw in an evade leap skill, Shadow Step to break stuns and get out of AoEs, and my always fun Dagger Storm to evade and pretend to be a axe-wielding warrior for a little bit, and despite not being as durable feeling at first, I quickly got a lot better once I started utilizing my crazy amounts of evasion correctly. And in addition to all that, I just felt really cool flipping and jumping and twirling all around, and actually was able to do some crazy fun stuff with a little bit of practice. My favorite go-to for a group of enemies quickly became dodge rolling to activate caltrops and buff myself, vaulting back in, which did more damage while evading and also restored endurance, and dodge rolling again and repeating that process until I couldn't anymore. It probably isn't the highest DPS you can do with a correct Daredevil build, but it was amazing fun, so that's what matters. Plus, throwing out disturbing amounts of crowd control by using Fist Flurry into Palm Strike and being able to absolutely spam Debilitating Arc into Helmet Breaker just mince up Defiance bars in no time, and it was absolutely awesome and hilarious. I don't think I've played a single build that can just spam out so much CC like this. I know there's probably some better tuned ones that can out there, but this was just crazy for me. Over the course of the first weekend of July, I was able to finish up all the Verdant Brink achievements at long last, which looks beautiful in my hero panel. Daredevil was an absolute blast, and I look forward to finding a fully tuned build for it in the future. The build I managed to cobble together was Acrobatics, Trickery, and Daredevil in a 2-3-2, 1-1-2, and 2-1-3 order, respectively. The worst and most unfortunate part that I got into with Daredevil was something that would haunt me the rest of the month: the Heart of Thorns adventures. I thought Verdant Brink's Tendril Tortures was bad, but little did I know the worst was yet ahead in the Tangled Depths. But before we get to that, we have Auric Basin and the Spectre gameplay to cover. Headed now to the golden city of Tarir is where my Spectre got a chance to shine. I was interested in Spectre from the start, and even better, the more I looked, the more excited I got. First of all, it was condition-based. And over the last few months, I've really been having fun with condition-based builds because it's been so dang long since I really played Annie. All of my go-to builds have been power builds. But not only was it condition-based, but also like last month's Scrapper, Spectre's unique skills were wells, and I had a good amount of fun with Scrapper last month, and these wells came with shadow steps built into it, which was a really cool addition. I set up a Condi-focused build, grabbed a Scepter, and hit the Viney trails. Now, I ran Scepter for all the Torment and other conditions, with Pistol offhand mostly for the ranged days for additional crowd control and staying at a range when possible. While initially it was an odd idea, being a magical casting thief with a Scepter, I had loads of fun with this build. Scepter skills felt and looked really good to me. Although, ArenaNet, can we do something about these tooltips? I mean, good lord, how am I supposed to read these tooltips on the fly? Well of Bounty, Sorrow, and Tears all felt great as well. And the elite skill Shadowfall giving me the ability to suck in enemies to my well shenanigans was the perfect complement to the double damaging wells. Siphon was awesome because I never had to try and think about what it was I just stole and how I should use it. I could just hit it every time it was off cooldown, and that was it, taking one less thing to think about out of play. Shadow Shroud was pretty cool too, and while it did still do good damage, I could tell I was missing out on the massive team support that Spectre could bring to a small group scenario. I ended up just putzing around here most of the week, and even doing some Return to Living World 3 content, because most of my Auric Basin stuff I had left was just collectible farming and some more painful adventures. So I filled the time in with some events, had some fun, did plenty of Octovines, and some Living World 3 stuff. My final Spectre build was Deadly Arts, Trickery, and Spectre in a 3-1-1, 3-3-2, and 3-1-1 format respectively. Honestly, one of the biggest takeaways of Spectre for me was that I'll probably switch my Thief over to run it primarily and bring her along for when I run World vs. World Havoc duos or small squads, because if you can get good with a good Spectre build, I feel like it brings so much additional support to the table for two coordinated people working together. Even still, unlike some other support stuff like the Centaur from Revenant, Spectre stood on its own just great, and I had a blast with it in Auric Basin. Unlike Verdant Brink, I wasn't able to finish all of the achievements as I still need to run Octovine a lot. But with my week in Auric Basin finished, it was time to delve into the Tangled Depths with my old friend, the Deadeye. I saved a build I was most familiar with for this section because I knew there were some pretty dense achievement runs left here, and Tangled Depths was not the most popular or liked map the last time I was here, outside of semi-professional wall watching, so I wanted to be able to hold my own. Big iron on my hip, I descended down and just started blasting. Event after event taken down, and honestly, I started to impress myself even with some champion level enemy solo efforts. While I was familiar with the Deadeye mechanics at a glance, I definitely had some perfecting and translating to do. Most of my experience is from 2-year-plus old World vs. World techniques that are still rattling around in my empty head here, so it took some experimentation to hone in. And I gotta say, I actually very much enjoy the gameplay loop in PvE, more of marking a target, building up 5 Malice, and then doing a stealth sniper shot to drain their hit points faster than I've been draining Cherry Coke Zeros lately, which is very fast. Not to mention, there's absolutely satisfaction for me in slow walking towards an enemy, just dumping rounds downrange with cool sound effects. It's the closest we've gotten to the Commando profession, which hopefully will get the next expansion pack after Janthier Wilds. My stealing utilization of what I stole really flourished here as well with Deadeye, and I felt like I was firing on all cylinders by this point in the month. Thief was starting to feel great. Now, the extremely unfortunate aspect of where I chose to play Deadeye is a ton of enemies here have Reflect, and I kept killing myself all the time. I mean, on some champions, I ended up on Dagger way more than I was actually using the Deadeye rifle, which felt weird, but it also surprised me how good Dagger felt on Deadeye. Also, Tangled Depths, in addition to being the most confusing map I've ever tried to navigate in this game, brought me face to face with one of my biggest pet peeves in Guild Wars 2. The amount of progression breaking bugs that still linger in old content drives me insane. Please, ArenaNet, I'm begging you, how many of these swimsuits do we have to buy before you can hire a team of like 2 or 3 to just go back through the last 12 years of content and bug fix? I mean, I'm not a coder by any means, I'm a plumber, but goodness gracious, it can't be that bad, can it? Seriously, I got hung up on this dang grub protection event dozens of times. I kept having to hop around servers to find an event chain that actually worked, and I ended up having to do most of the chain like 8 different times because I would miss one event or the final event wouldn't get completed before the Chalk Garant spawned, and the Chalk Garant spawning auto ends all the lane-based quests. I wanted to chew on a brick. It was so frustrating. My build was Shadow Arts, Trickery, and Denai in a 2-3-2, 3-1-2, and 1-1-2 format. Over the course of the week, I was able to power through all but 2 achievements here for Tangled Depths. With all the lane achievements I had left and how long the lane quests take, this was certainly the most grindy of all the weeks thus far, but there was one more yet to come, and it would be the most disappointing of all. For Core Thief, I took to Dragon's Stand to take the fight to Mordremoth over and over and over again and finish up the last 7 achievements I had left here. But there was nobody here. You can't start lanes without at least 5 people in each one, which is 15 people total, and I needed stuff from every lane, so I just gave up. I abandoned the Heart of Thorns portion of the challenge since Festival of the Four Winds came out around this time, and I had planned on coming back during the weekend for Dragon's Stand when hopefully more people were on, but sadly real life got in the way of most of my last week of July I saved for Core Thief, and it just never happened, unfortunately. So Mordremoth went undefeated. I got a good amount of Core Thief gameplay in still, though. I was doing a lot of boss blitz with poisons primarily, and I very much enjoyed it. Dagger has always been a fun combo for me on Thief. I enjoy the stealth backstab combos, and hadn't played around with poisons much, so that was enjoyable. I played around with Dagger Pistol a little bit, and a little bit of Sword Dagger, and some non-Daredevil staff. It's only in writing and recording this video that I realized I completely forgot that Thief got access to the axe a while ago as part of the expanded weapon masteries, so yeah, I really missed out on that during this month, which is a huge oversight on my part. But overall, the old Core Thief still felt pretty good, but not nearly as fun as either of the other 3 elite specs. I will say by this point, my stealing was absolutely on point, however. My core build was Deadly Arts, Critical Strikes, and Trickery in a 3-1-1, 3-1-1, and 3-1-3 format. Now, I didn't fully complete my Heart of Thorns achievements this month, so I fell a bit short there, but where I didn't fall short is learning how to play the class and having an absolute blast while doing it. Compared to the Revenant and Engineer, the fun I had on all of these builds was honestly pretty dang equal. I can't even really call a winner here, that's how close it was for me. I had a blast, and this really made me feel confident in my Thief abilities. I mean, if I was pulling off some massive group pulls and even a couple champion solos with my own builds, I can't imagine what an actual optimized, tuned, and built with a brain build is going to be able to do the next time I hop on to play Thief. I can officially say Thief feels like a class I can actually be good at and understand for the first time since probably 2013. Next month, I've definitely got to up the ante as far as the challenge, but until then, you should click this video right here to see how last month's awesome Engineer for a Month challenge led me to craft the very first legendary I ever wanted all the way back in vanilla Guild Wars 2.